That's 44 years.
How much IRS invasion has there been?
44 years, less than 100. In those 44 years, there have been over 1.3 billion votes just for the president. That's not including state, local. That is not including Congress. That is not including off-year elections. That is just for the president. That is not a problem. The idea that people are arguing that this is a problem is a lie. It's a furtherance of the lie.
Do you think there should be a uniform standard, though?
The Supreme Court has just handed Donald Trump a temporary victory in his push to restrict mail-in voting. But this CNN panel is making one thing very clear. The court did not actually rule that Trump's plan is constitutional. The debate gets into the executive order, alleged voter fraud, states' rights, and whether the administration is using a problem that is already illegal to justify taking greater control over how Americans vote. Now, if you're new here, I'm Bradley Hostin, and this is The Bradley Hostin Show. If you enjoy honest political commentary, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
What is next for mail-in voting? This after the Supreme Court lifted a block on the president's plans aimed to limit mail-in voting. The court did not say that what he wants to do is inherently legal. This is a procedural win for the president, but might be temporary. The president wants to use the post office to control who does not get mail ballots. The court basically said states do not have...
Is a substantive issue here with the executive order.
They didn't rule on the merits, but to disagree with Justice Jackson, it didn't really inject chaos because nothing actually changed. The court temporarily granted to the Trump administration that, yes, you could compile this citizenship list and send it out to the states, but the Postal Service doesn't actually have to reject any ballots that come back with names that aren't on that list. So it's basically saying you're kind of stuck. You don't really get to do anything with this ruling for the time being. But zooming out here, non-citizens voting, which is really why this executive order was instituted in the first place, is already illegal. The problem is that President Trump does not actually have the power to prevent non-citizens from voting. A lot of people think that he does, so this is almost like a moot and irrelevant battle that he's fighting. He has the power to prosecute people who are found to have engaged in illegal voting or aiding and abetting it, but he cannot stop it. Why do you think he's fighting so hard for the SAVE Act? It's because he doesn't actually have the authority right now.
I wonder why is he fighting so hard for the SAVE Act when there are so very few non-citizens that are voting at all? It's actually sort of an imaginary problem, and so many Americans have real problems right now making rent, buying groceries.
I think the integrity of our election system is worth fighting for.
He is actually spending most of his time undermining our election system from where I sit.
It's very sound. I think another thing that's addressed here, and I think you brought this up, is the Supreme Court is telling these district court judges, stop doing these injunctions.
Right.
Stop jumping in when the president of the United States says something or does something and saying, in my district, I'm going to decide that none of this can happen across the United States. I think the Supreme Court, in its last recent couple of decisions, has decided that we're not going to allow these district court judges to have the authority over presidential decisions. They want to keep that power for themselves.
I don't know that I agree with that, because I think that the procedural issue that they're addressing is timing. And on Friday, when the USPS put in place the rule, it set the ball in motion for this to actually be implemented. So it's only a matter of time before they get to a point where they try to implement this, in which case it would be ripe for a challenge, and it would have to still go through the same judicial process.
But I think they're going to want them to come back to the Supreme Court, not rely on...
I agree with that.
Come back while they're voting.
The lower court will still have to rule on the merits of a challenge to this.
But we don't know what the implementation will look like. The Postal Service actually has a statute more than 100 plus years old that says it can't be a party to fraudulent activity. You can't send counterfeit, you can't send drugs, you can't engage in cheating your neighbor by using the mail system. There is a robust anti-fraud position, and it is possible.
You gotta prove that there's fraud.
It is.
I mean, that's the problem, is that you have to prove that there is fraud.
That they limit what this new rule does so that it focuses on fraud prevention.
Listen, to your
fraud?
point,
I want to know what fraud.
That is already in the book, so I don't understand what the executive order would be about.
No fraud. This isn't a win for Republicans because essentially the Supreme Court said the president hasn't done anything with this yet. So I don't think if they should look at this as a win.
No, I'm just going to Abby's point that we already know it's a preordained outcome of what happens then.
That's literally not what I said. I did not say that. All I said was that the point at which this becomes ripe for challenge is perhaps coming very soon.
Yes.
Because they are moving forward
but it
with
may
a
not
process
be
that would allow them to
looking the
challenge
way
it.
that it does
And I would,
today.
to this point of fraud, first of all, you're right. It's already illegal to vote if you are not a citizen. It's already illegal to use the mail system in a fraudulent way. Those things are already illegal. The Trump administration is trying to claim that there is such widespread fraud that this executive order is necessary. They put out a whole bunch of claims earlier this year, including that in Nevada, there were 278,000 non-citizens registered to vote in 4 states. And in Nevada, they said there were 15,000. Well, it turns out they can't prove that. It turns out that they've identified only 185 potential non-citizens in the state so far. So that's why people have a lot of skepticism about these claims that were made a few months ago, because they put out these massive numbers to try to make it seem way more common, and they have yet to back any of them up.
But that's
still not a-
I'm sorry.
With prosecutions, with proof, they haven't backed any
That's
of
a
it up.
PR argument.
That's not a
That is not a
legal
PR
one.
argument.
It's not a
I
PR
know you-
argument.
that's not a PR
It's-
argument.
it's not-
There are facts underneath this. Even those cases, they said they were on the rolls, but they didn't say that any of those people actually voted illegally.
Well, they also
So-
haven't even proven that those people are
Exactly,
actually
right. So
non-citizens.
not
None
even
of that has been
exactly.
Well, the problem
And then
is-
the Heritage Foundation actually keeps a record of convictions of non-citizens voting. Since 1982, they have 40. I'm sorry, it's not 44. It's less than 100 cases of people charged with voting illegally.
And convicted. And convicted.
And convicted. And that's 44 years, right?
And convicted.
That's 44 years.
How much
And
IRS invasion
and
has there been?
44 years, less than 100. In those 44 years, there have been over 1.3 billion votes just for the president. That's not including state, local. That is not including Congress. That is not including off-year elections. That is just for the president. That is not a problem. The idea that people are arguing that this is a problem is a lie. Is a furtherance of the lie.
Do you think there should be a uniform standard, though, ensuring verification of
I don't think there should be national elections. I do not think that the election should be nationalized, which is what Trump is pushing for. I think the state should
I'm with
have
you.
it.
Democrats actually proposed this idea
I think
first.
the state should have it.
Yes, but the problem is that not all the states actually do require uniform verification, and so this is trying to address that problem.
Uniform verification, not no verification.
This is the thing that our president should be spending his time, effort, and energy.
I push back on that. That is not the basis.
Do you think this is the thing that most people are talking about at their
That
dinner
is
table right
not
now?
the basis for whether it is illegal or unconstitutional. And that is the reason why, if a new challenge comes and these kinds of policy arguments are made, the court is going to allow this to be implemented.
There's no way in the world they would. I can tell you this.
No.
There's no way in the world that the court would allow an executive order to override what's in the Constitution. The states have the power. And you talk about needing evidence and to back it up legally, you still have to show some kind of proof that this is happening, even for it to become an issue.
Counselor.
He's making this an issue.
Counselor.
That doesn't need to be
You're presenting
addressed.
facts that are not in evidence. We do not know if this regulation is going to do what you just described. There are things that
The description is that the federal government has to approve who the indivial states
they've already pulled back from that.
ballots.
The other fact that's not in evidence is that there is no fraud.
Hold on, Horace. You're suggesting that the executive order, as it's written, they've backed away from parts of it, and so that should be sufficient. The executive order, as it's written, basically says the states or somebody. There's going to be a list. The Postal Service is going to determine whether people are on that list, and then they are going to approve or deny ballots from being sent or received through the mail system. That is the crux of the challenge.
And really, though, when we get the zoom out, though, what does this do to voters? Does this instill trust?
Well, listen,
the court isn't reviewing the executive order.
Hold on.
The court is reviewing
Horace,
what
you keep
is the
fighting
USPS doing.
You keep fighting the last battle. We already established that the Supreme Court ruling doesn't address the merits of the case. But what Dante was talking about is the second iteration of this. Eventually, this will come to the merits.
It won't be about the executive order, is what I'm saying.
Eventually,
it will
Horace,
be about the implementing rules.
What you're saying is he created an executive order, but he's not going to have an executive order.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
But that's what
I don't know what you're saying.
I am saying that the USPS has already gone to the district court and said, notwithstanding this executive order, here are the things we're actually planning to do. And we have heard your complaints and we have modified our plans accordingly.
Oh, okay. So the USPS has single-handedly modified the president's executive
Just
order.
read the case.
So for me, the biggest thing to understand here is that the Supreme Court did not give Donald Trump permission to restrict mail-in voting. They essentially said the challenge came too early because the states couldn't yet show the specific harm necessary to bring the case. And I think that's extremely important because the way this gets presented politically can completely change the public's understanding of what actually happened. The other thing that stood out to me was the discussion about voter fraud. If non-citizens voting is already illegal, then the obvious question is, what exactly is this executive order trying to fix? And when you start hearing huge claims about thousands of non-citizens supposedly being registered, but those numbers aren't backed up by evidence of people actually casting illegal ballots, I think skepticism is completely justified. I'm also concerned about the broader issue of states controlling their own elections. If the federal government starts determining who can receive or return mail ballots across the country, that's an enormous expansion of federal power over elections. And that's why I think this fight is far from over. The Supreme Court hasn't settled the underlying constitutional question yet. And once the administration actually implements these policies and specific voters or states can demonstrate harm, we're likely going to see this back in court. So don't let the headline fool you. This wasn't a final victory for Trump's mail-in voting plan. The real battle is still coming. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think Trump is genuinely trying to protect election integrity, or is this an attempt to gain greater federal control over elections? As usual, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more news commentaries. I'll see you guys in the next one.